Audra is on her laptop in Chancellor Park when Kyle drifts by. She accuses him of stalking, so the bickering begins. He wants her to leave town, and she accuses him of doing nothing but beating his chest and making empty threats. He warns that the worst is yet to come. Kyle gloats that Sally is her only friend, and she'll soon realize she's more trouble than she's worth. Audra thinks Claire must have realized that about him. He offers her a one-way flight anywhere, or bus fare to the state line. She makes it clear that she will leave on her terms if she goes. He threatens that she'd better make herself disappear or someone else will. Kyle continues threatening Audra as she packs up to go. She goads him about what Holden and Claire are likely doing as they speak, points out that Kyle has even fewer friends than she does, and needles that he only has a job because of his family. If one of them should be leaving to start a new life, it's him. He thinks she needs to take responsibility for her failures. As they debate what happened overseas, she accuses him of hating himself for wanting her so badly. When will he accept the kind of man he really is? At Crimson Lights, Sharon tells Nick she's eager for their trip to LA to see Noah. He explains he might have to take a later flight because it seems like his dad is gearing up for a fight. Nick suggests she jet to LA on her own and he'll join her later. They discuss how excited their son is about his new club, but she suspects he's only using it as an excuse to get them out there. When they get back on the topic of what else? But Kane, Nick dismisses him as all talk and no game. Talk turns to Mariah. Sharon's eager for news from Daniel and Tessa, admitting that her gut is telling her things will get far worse for Mariah before they improve. She considered using her credentials to get information, but that would be a violation of trust. Nick tries to put an optimistic spin on things and reminds her to have fun with their son. After Nick takes off, Audra arrives and Sharon is sure to tell her she's on her way to see Noah, who may be opening a club in LA. He and Allie are so happy and in love. Audra cringes. Victoria joins her father at the ranch, and the topic quickly switches from panda videos to what else? But Kane. He's decided to have Chelsea and Adam release the information about Colin, which is sure to ruin his reputation. Victoria points out that he has billions, so he won't disappear. She also warns that he's alienated his kids and has nothing to lose. Attacking Ashby could make things worse. Victor's unconcerned, but Victoria continues to worry about what the AI software could do if it's real. Victor explains that this is only phase 1 of his attack. She speculates on his next move. The mustache debates whether Jill will side with Kane. Whatever the outcome, he's sure it will be good for their family. Victor admits he only wants Jack to think he will work with him. Nick arrives and says he's anxious to get to LA to see Noah. His father informs him that they are launching an all-out war on Ashby, and every move is crucial. They hash over how things can play out. Nick still thinks Kane is all bark, and they should ignore him. His father wants Kane to find out that his threats are serious. This will all start very soon. Ashby doesn't know what he's up against. At Jabot, Diane's still not convinced it's wise to work with Victor. Jack shares her concerns and worries where Jill's loyalties lie. Diane doesn't like Victor being his backup. Her husband doesn't like it either. He knows she's scared, but promises that she doesn't have to be. Jack reminds her that Jill was an abbot once. No matter how she feels about Kane, he's sure she won't allow him to sink Jabot or Chancellor. Switching gears, Diane worries about how despondent Kyle has been since losing Claire. She's startled when Jack admits Kyle's situation is mostly of his own making and warns against coddling him. Diane argues that being tough on him will only make him lash out at Audra and Holden. Kyle swans in and grabs a cup of coffee. He informs his parents that Claire's decision knocked him off his feet, but now he's ready to fight. Proving definitively that he's learned absolutely nothing, Kyle announces that he isn't giving Holden the chance to seduce Claire. He's heading to LA to win her back. Hello everyone! Welcome back to my channel Pulse Canvas. It's me, Julie here. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Keep watching. So let's dive into today's video. The Young and the Restless spoilers for Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, have Nikki settling unfinished business with Jill, Tessa worrying about Mariah's safety, and Nick questioning Phyllis's alliance with Kane. There's a long history between Jill Foster Abbott and Nikki Reed Newman, which dates back to Nikki's marriage to Jill's brother Greg. On Tuesday's show, watch for Nikki and Jill to interact when Nikki attempts to settle some unfinished business with her former sister-in-law. Y&R's strongest asset is its long-running veteran characters, so these scenes are ones that viewers are especially looking forward to seeing. We saw Tessa tell Sharon last week that she was going to try to get to the bottom of what was going on with Mariah. On Tuesday's show, watch for Tessa to worry about Mariah's safety. She has some information to go because Mariah told her wife that she had almost killed someone. That was what made her so fearful and caused her to leave her relationship. Tessa has enlisted Daniel's aid in trying to help Mariah. However, Tessa and Daniel teaming up could bring them even closer together. Even if Tessa rescues Mariah, will they have a relationship to resume? Phyllis Summers is a smart cookie. She must have gotten emotional support in her divorce settlement from ex-husband, Nick. The man keeps an eye on his former wife, as she still cares for her deeply. On Tuesday's show, watch for Nick to question his former wife's alliance with Kane. The man known as Aristotle Dumas is a wild card. Some days, he's only concerned with his personal relationships, and others, he's set out to conquer all of Genoa City. Nick is right to be concerned about Phyllis's alliance with Kane. If there's one person in her life that Phyllis will listen to, it's Nick. On The Young and the Restless, things haven't panned out for Billy Abbott quite like he imagined. Prior to Kane Ashby's unveiling as Aristotle Dumas, Billy was poised for the launch of Abbott Communications. However, once the Abbott family black sheep caught wind of a way to get Chancellor back, his obsession to beat Victor Newman consumed him. Unfortunately for Billy, not only did his partnership with Kane completely crumble, but his brother Jack Abbott has officially pulled the funding from Abbott Communications. Every corner of his corporate aspirations has crumbled, leaving him wounded, and a desperate Billy is the ultimate wild card. Aside from his girlfriend, Sally Spectra, there is nobody left in Genoa City who believes in Billy. He's become his own worst enemy too many times for anyone to put a sustained level of faith in him. To Jack's credit, he tried to ride out the typical Billy back and forth, but he isn't budging this time. Jill will always favor her fake son, Kane Ashby, over her biological son Billy. With his back against the wall, Jill's continued loyalty to Kane is only making him more volatile and unpredictable. Billy thought he had something solid in the works with Kane, but that blew up. He thought Jill would never undermine him, but she sold the company to Victor from underneath him. Jack's endlessly disappointed in him as well, and Sally is trying to be a supportive girlfriend. However, she has her own floundering career to worry about. Billy is surrounded by betrayal, and his desire for relevance makes him the biggest threat in Genoa City. Most recently, he seemed ready to do the unthinkable and join forces with the Mustache Victor and destroy Kane and his AI program. Everyone should be on guard, though, because Billy's top priority has always been and always will be himself and what suits his self-interests. All of Billy's alliances and partnerships are contingent on his feelings in the moment and subject to change. Whether he goes all in with Jack and Victor doesn't mean the latter's suspicions won't prove correct. Victor suspected Billy could easily run back to Kane and warn him of their plans. And if Billy feels like Kane could better suit his needs, he'll do just that. For now, he is joining the unholy alliance to take down his faux bro, but for how long? Plus, Sally's meddling behind the scenes to secure funding for Abbott Communications through Jill won't sit well with Billy when he discovers. How Billy will fit into the equation as a wildcard could go two drastically different ways. If he remains focused and on track, he will be a formidable opponent against anyone in his path on The Young and the Restless. He's one of the only people unafraid to face off against Victor, and taking down Kane seems like something he'd enjoy at this point. However, if Billy falls back into his self-destructive ways and loses the plot, he's a liability to anyone and everyone in his path. Billy wants to prove himself to members on what appear to be opposing sides. Billy will never stop seeking the approval of his older brother, Jack. But deep down, he also wants to show Jill that he isn't a screw-up, which could mean going to great lengths to do so, even if that means teaming with Kane to destroy Jack and Jabot. His unpredictability makes him quite possibly the largest threat to corporate security in Genoa City, but whether that's a positive or a negative is entirely up to Billy and his level of self-control. The Young and the Restless spoilers document that Billy Abbott didn't heal his rift with Jill Abbott. Then, he arrived at the Abbott homestead and saw Victor Newman in the living room. Viewers know that Victor rarely crosses the Abbott threshold. He considers it the territory of his enemy. But the alliance that Jack Abbott formed with Victor is purposeful. Billy isn't on board, but will play along because he still believes Chancellor can be reclaimed somehow. Victor intended to work with Jack, but only as part of a temporary deal. The mustache sees value in Jack's idea of partnering with the intention of knocking Kane Ashby out. Billy's arrival provided Victor with some useful intel. The former head of Chancellor told his brother and the founder of Newman Enterprises, which includes its Chancellor subsidiary, that Jill was in town and met with Kane. Braden's character now says that they need to divide and conquer. Billy sees through Victor's facade, but Jack is willing to believe that his rival will go along to reach their endgame. Jack doesn't realize that Victor wants to not only crush Kane, but also would like to topple Jabot in one fell swoop, as the Dark Knight termed it. Billy lacks self-discipline. Victor refers to him as Billy Boy because of his penchant for repeated reckless behavior. It was telling that Kane picked up on Victor's condescending nickname. He called his quasi-brother Billy Boy as a jab. Jill was very upset that she couldn't reconcile with Billy, seeing that he was on another dark road. But she bonded with Kane, realizing that he feels lost. Viewers must wonder if, on some level, Kane might be playing Jill, or if he's not, will lash out, despite whatever wise advice she offers. As for Victor, Billy won't help Kane. But he could let a portion of Jack and Victor's plan slip during another heated exchange. Kane has proven that he can push many people's buttons to extract information. This storyline began months ago and has only been seen in half-baked snippets. The gist is that Mariah was drinking while out of state on a business trip for Cassidy First and met a much older man. Mariah said that the man reminded her of Ian Ward and provoked repressed rage. That led to her flashback with this man. It's only a few weeks from Halloween now. So, it wouldn't be surprising to see this story stretched until then, with a horror reveal hopefully happening by month's end. On the Monday, October 6th episode of The Young and the Restless, Audra and Kyle clashed. Sharon sensed something was off with Noah, and Victor prepared to put his plan in motion. In Chancellor Park, Kyle spotted Audra and tried to walk past her unnoticed. "Look who's stalking who now," she chided. He retorted that she looked like she'd been lying in wait since she had nothing better to do with no job, relationship, or life. He asked what she was still doing in Genoa City when no one wanted her there. Audra mocked Kyle's latest tantrum, in which he'd sworn to make it his life mission to pay her back, and she warned that he'd have to do more than make empty threats. He told her the worst was yet to come. Kyle offered Audra a one-way plane ticket anywhere in the world on his family's private jet, but she asserted that she paid her own way. "One way or another," Kyle muttered. Audra growled that she'd slap him in the hope he choked on the silver spoon in his mouth, but it would mean she'd have to touch him. He reasoned that bus fare to the state line was more her speed. Kyle ominously stated that if Audra knew what was good for her, she'd disappear before someone else did. Kyle claimed that he hadn't taken action yet because he'd felt sorry for Audra. She thought he was in worse shape than she was after he'd lost his precious Claire. Audra envisioned Holden charming Claire by pointing out the sights at his favorite rooftop bar over Vespers and rubbing sunscreen all over her the way Kyle had applied it to Audra in France. Audra imagined the scenarios that had run through Kyle's head, and he was there to try to get over his jealousy and sexual frustration. Audra called Kyle a spoiled, rich brat who only had a job because he was an abbot, but his life was as wasted as it was empty. She added that if anyone should go to a new town to make a new life, it was him. Kyle theorized that Audra was angry at herself, and he encouraged her to accept responsibility and reality. Audra defended that she'd owned up to her mistakes, but the problem was that Kyle couldn't accept how much he wanted her, and they both knew how close he'd been to taking things beyond kissing in France, Kyle maintained that he'd been onto Audra's scheme from the start. Audra questioned why he'd left his girlfriend to entrap Audra if he'd had doubts about Audra's plan. Audra proclaimed that he loved the game, and he was a player and always would be. She added that it was why he found women like her more alluring than those like Summer and Claire, and it was why his relationships had failed. "When are you going to accept the kind of man you really are?" Audra spat. Nick arrived at Crimson Lights, and Sharon rambled about everything she'd done to ensure she'd be on time to catch their flight. He informed her that there was a chance he'd missed the flight because Victor had summoned him to the ranch, and he had the feeling his father was looking for a fight. Nick suggested that Sharon fly to LA by herself, and he'd follow later that night or the next morning. She told him not to keep her and Noah waiting long, since their son had seemed off the last few times they'd talked. Nick thought Noah might just be nervous about opening a second club, but Sharon sensed that Noah's request for their advice had just been an excuse to get them both to LA. Sharon lectured that Noah expected to see Nick with her, and she worried that Nick would get pulled into the next phase of Victor's battle and not make it to LA at all. Nick pledged to keep his word to make the trip. Nick recognized that Sharon was also worried about Mariah. Sharon reported that Mariah had checked into a clinic in Boston. Sharon wished Daniel and Tessa would check in, but Nick stressed that the important thing was that Mariah was getting the help she needed. Sharon had a terrible feeling that things would get worse for Mariah before they got better. Sharon recognized that Mariah needed to work through it on her own, but it was hard not to worry as a mother. Nick implored Sharon to catch her flight, and he promised he would be in LA soon. Later, Sharon served Audra and asked if Nate would be joining her, but Audra replied that she was flying solo. Sharon chirped that she'd soon be flying solo to see Noah, who might open a club in LA. Audra was happy that he'd found his passion, but she asked if he missed art. Sharon gushed that Noah had a full life, and he and Allie were head over heels in love. Audra forced a smile. At the new Newman Ranch, Victoria found Victor reading The Art of War and surmised that he was getting ready for battle. Victoria recalled that Cole had given him the book as a gift, and Victor understood if she wasn't up for a meeting. She recognized that all hands needed to be on deck with Kane going after their family, and Victor mentioned that he'd asked Adam and Chelsea to cut their business trip short. Victor confirmed that Kane hadn't given in to his demands, so they needed to destroy him. Victor looked forward to ruining Kane's reputation by having Adam and Chelsea release the information about Kane and Colin swindling a widow out of her fortune across all of Newman Media's platforms. Victor anticipated that people would no longer consider Kane a savvy mogul once they knew he was a fraud like his father. Victoria knew that Adam was ready to pull the trigger, but she had reservations because the plan might exacerbate the situation and make things worse. Victor assured Victoria that he'd made plans for all the possible outcomes. Victoria fretted that both sides had only made threats so far, but if they carried out theirs, Kane might unleash his AI. Victor bragged that it was just the first phase of his attack. Victoria guessed the next steps had something to do with Victor's truce with Jack, but Victor clarified that he hadn't agreed to anything. Victoria clucked that Sun Tzu had advised to shore up one's alliances before mounting an attack. She expected Victor to wait for Jill to react and then decide whether or not to ally. She'd ally herself with Jack. Victor wasn't sure Jill wanted to work with either him or Jack, but he anticipated the outcome would be good for their family. Victor shared that he only wanted Jack to think they would be working together. Nick walked in and apologized for being late, noting that he was supposed to be on a plane to LA. Victor firmly stated that nothing was more important than their family and company, and he needed Nick's advice because every move they made would be crucial. Nick wondered if Nikki had signed off on Victor's plan. Victor asserted that Nikki was part of their family and Chancellor Industries' CEO, so those were her priorities. Victoria voiced her concern about Kane retaliating once they released the damaging information in the press. Nick pondered whether they should ignore Kane instead of provoking him. Victor insisted that Kane needed to find out that Victor's threats were serious. Victor instructed Nick to tell Adam to be ready with his part and inform the IT team to watch for abnormalities. Victoria indicated that they had updated their firewall and had the best cyber defense money could buy, but they didn't know if Kane's AI program was real. Victor expected that they'd find out very quickly, and Kane didn't know what he was up against. At Jabot, Diane sensed that Victor had something up his sleeve. "As do I," Jack replied, and Diane requested that he proceed with caution. Jack said he didn't plan to put much trust in Victor. Jack believed the clock was ticking with Jill in town, and he contemplated where Jill's loyalties fell because he hadn't heard from her. Jack informed Diane that he and Victor had decided to divide and conquer. Diane cautioned him against it because he'd be putting himself and Jabot at risk with no backup. Jack figured that both he and Victor would separately impress upon Jill how dangerous Kane's plan was, but he wasn't counting on Victor to save him because he had his family for that. Diane worried that Victor's unwillingness to commit to being on board made Jack vulnerable. Jack argued that Jill had paid a high price to protect Chancellor, and she'd also loved his father and kept the Abbott name. Jack couldn't fathom that Jill would allow Kane to sink either Jabot or Chancellor. Diane realized that Kyle had apparently forgotten that they were supposed to meet. She noted that he'd seemed despondent that morning, and she felt guilty because she thought he felt both she and Jack had taken Claire's side. Jack said his heart went out to his son, but the situation was mostly of Kyle's making. Diane was surprised to hear Jack sound so cold. Jack countered that he was just being realistic, since they'd learned that coddling Kyle was the worst thing for him. Diane thought it sounded like an accusation. Diane swore that she wasn't against Kyle learning from his mistakes, but seeing his pain made her second-guess taking a tough love approach. She was concerned that Kyle's first reaction to making a mistake was to lash out, and she was afraid he'd take out his anger on Audra and Holden. Jack thought Kyle had his head on straight and wouldn't react in the heat of the moment. Kyle entered the office, and Diane asked how he was holding up. Kyle admitted that he hadn't been himself because Claire's decision had sandbagged him, but he was back on his feet and ready to fight. Jack warned that any choices Kyle made while angry would be based more on raw instinct than rational thought. Kyle believed that he'd been overthinking things when he should have been following his gut. He announced that he'd decided not to wait around to see what happened with Claire, and he was going to LA to do whatever it took to win her back. The Young and the Restless spoilers reveal there are 3 must-see moments for the week of October 6th, 2025. Fans can expect Tessa Porter to worry about Mariah Copeland's safety. Jill Abbott and Lily Winters confront Kane Ashby about his past. Plus, Nick Newman goes rogue. Keep reading and let's talk about what is coming up in the CBS soap opera. Let's start off with Tessa, who has gone off to Boston to investigate Mariah's claim. The redhead told her wife that she tried to kill a man. However, Tessa is having a hard time believing this and wants to know the whole truth. Tessa goes to Boston with Daniel Romalotti Jr. However, it sounds like they find something unsettling. In a weekly preview clip, Sharon Newman is working at the coffee house when she sees Tessa and Daniel. The blonde asks if they found out any information. That is when Tessa has a troubled look and says they did find something. As the week progresses, Tessa will fear for Mariah's safety. The Young and the Restless spoilers for the week of October 6th reveal that another must-see moment centers on Jill. The woman has come back to Genoa City, but things aren't any better with Billy Abbott. Next, Jill and Lily will join forces. The two will confront Kane together to question him about the past 6 years. It is also stated that Nick ends up going rogue. Does this have to do with Kane's mission, or could this be about his trip to see Noah Newman? Claire Grace Newman and Holden Novak are about to go to LA as well. Then, it is teased that Victoria Newman chases after Claire. So, I wonder if Nick going rogue might have more to do with Claire than with saving the Newman empire. There is also Kyle Abbott. The young man already lost Claire. So, will he make another disastrous mistake by sleeping with Audra Charles? They can act hateful all they want. It seems like they are just obsessed with one another. So, stay tuned to see the fallout. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most during the week of October 6th, 2025? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to keep watching the soap on CBS or Paramount Plus to find out what happens next. The Young and the Restless spoilers for the next 2 weeks suggest some curveballs. From October 6 to 17, fans can expect Noah Newman's new story to begin. Kane Ashby could lose everything. Plus, Adam Newman and Chelsea Lawson are rewarded by Victor Newman. Keep reading And let's talk about what is coming up in the CBS soap opera. Before getting to the two-weekers, let's talk about what is coming up from October 6 to 10. For one thing, Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles will continue to get under each other's skin. Now that Claire Grace Newman has dumped him, Kyle won't have much reason to behave himself anymore. Tessa Porter and Daniel Romalotti Jr. will come back to Genoa City. When they stop by to see Sharon Newman, the blonde asks if they found something. Tessa and Daniel both have concerned faces as the singer confirms they did find something out about Mariah Copeland. Later in the week, Tessa will continue to fear for Mariah's safety. Fans will also see Nick grill Phyllis Summers. Later in the week, Phyllis gets caught in a compromising position. Nikki Newman calls a truce with Jill Abbott. Meanwhile, Jack Abbott tries to push Kane into doing the right thing. Later, Kane is confronted by both Jill and Lily Winters. Plus, Victor rewards Adam and Chelsea. Elsewhere, Nick goes rogue. There is also Christine Blair and Danny Romalotti. It seems they will make a big decision about their wedding. Will it be another postponement, or maybe they'll skip the big ceremony and just elope? In any case, expect some curveballs and twists. During the week of October 17th, fans will see Sharon arrive in Los Angeles, but Nick won't be with her. Nick will come along a bit later. There will be some kind of drama with Noah and his new club in Los Angeles. Interestingly enough, Claire and Holden Novak are in LA as well. It is also teased that Victoria Newman chases her daughter down, so stay tuned for the drama. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to keep watching the soap on CBS or Paramount Plus to find out what happens next. Audra's got her work cut out if she wants to win Nate back. Audra is heartbroken on The Young and the Restless. After her latest scheme, Nate dumped his conniving girlfriend. While things look gloomy for the couple, Zuleika Silver hints there may be hope. When Audra partnered with Victor, she didn't know how much it'd impact her life. Although Audra was supposed to break up Kyle and Claire, it's her relationship that suffered the most. Audra was so focused on Vibrante that she failed to realize how much her and Victor's scheme would hurt Nate. When Audra's secret was finally exposed, Nate was hurt and ended their relationship. While Audra would normally pick herself up and move on, she's still pining after Nate. Although Nate wants nothing to do with Audra, she's not giving up on them. In a recent interview with Soap Opera Digest, Silver discussed the couple's relationship and how Nate helped Audra grow as a person. I think Nate was able to tap into something that no one else has, where he made her feel safe. Audra had a good thing in her relationship with Nate, but she didn't know how much she would love or appreciate him until he was gone. I think she's realizing now that he was sort of an anchor to her and he made her better. But girl, she's realizing it too late, Silver told the magazine. Audra isn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. On the October 3rd episode, Audra put all her cards on the table with Nate. Emotions were running high as a tearful Audra apologized and asked Nate to forgive her. Unfortunately, Nate couldn't find it in his heart to forgive Audra. Her betrayal was too much and he can't trust her. Although Audra was left more heartbroken, she's not giving up on Nate. However, her journey to win him back won't be easy. To earn Nate's trust, Audra must be honest, something she's learning to do. Silver says viewers will see Audra's more vulnerable side as she finally takes accountability for her actions and be honest. Audra changed once, and she can do it again, but outside forces will test her, namely Kyle. Tensions with the former lovers turned enemies are at an all-time high. Audra tried to make peace with Kyle by apologizing, yet he wouldn't accept. Kyle blames Audra for his breakup with Claire and wants Audra out of his life. Yet, Audra isn't going anywhere, much to Kyle's dismay. How Audra handles the Kyle situation moving forward could help or hurt her chances with Nate. He made it clear that her antagonizing Kyle and Claire was a deal-breaker. If Audra wants to win Nate back, she'll have to be the bigger person in her feud with Kyle. However, that's easier said than done. Viewers want to know what's next for Kyle and Claire. Who's going to end up on the rebound? Fans of The Young and the Restless are wondering what's next for Kyle and Claire after their shocking split. Who's going to be the first to have a rebound fling? Temptations are bound to happen in the coming weeks. Someone's bound to get into their feelings. Kyle and Audra have a weird, flirty, hate-love banter. Meanwhile, Claire and Holden could share more than just Vespers. Fans are placing their bets on who will move on quickly. On Reddit, one fan asked, "The breakup, what's next?" Now that Claire has broken up with Kyle, how many days do you think it will be before Kyle is back in bed with Audra? And how long before Claire ends up in bed with Holden? Kyle is livid that Claire accepted Holden's offer to explore Los Angeles. Claire argued that she needs to figure out who she is since those decisions have been made for her for much of her life. One fan suggested, Claire will get drunk with Holden and wake up next to him in bed. But then, she'll regret her decision and leave the room with her clothes in her hands. She'll end up bumping into Kyle, who will drink his sorrows at the bar. In a surprise twist, Audra feels sorry for him and apologizes. Then, they'll end up in bed together. Claire will see them walking off, hand in hand. The poster added, "This will take 24 or 48 hours in Central Genoa soap time, 2 to 4 weeks, real time." Someone else wrote, "I don't think Claire will sleep with Holden, but I think Kyle will hear that she went to LA with Holden and will assume they slept together. Then he'll have revenge sex with Audra, and Claire will find out. That's not how this is going to transpire." On Monday's episode, Kyle goes on the revenge path after his heated confrontation with Audra at the park. He decides to take his fate into his own hands, once again. Kyle's going to follow Claire and Holden in Los Angeles. Audra got into his head when she told him that Claire wasn't his type. Somehow, in Kyle's mind, this is a good idea. Claire didn't like it before when Kyle was trying to call the shots in their relationship. They were supposed to be on a break. Claire wanted to slow things down, and Kyle didn't go along with that. He wanted to get married as soon as possible.